Betty Rock, does the name Lonnie Frisbee mean anything to you?
Not really.
Well, it didn't to me either until I saw the new Erwin Brothers film, Jesus Revolution. It's that one that's like faith-based, and it's not the usual like faith-based film. Yes, it's a movie that tells the faith story of Pastor Greg Laurie after meeting this hippie preacher named Lonnie Frisbee. And what's cool is it's kind of all true. It was set in the 60s and 70s during the Jesus movement. And I'm telling you, Rock, you would absolutely love the soundtrack. It's really good. Your dad raised you on that stuff.
What did you like about the movie?
I like that the movie's about a guy searching for identity and inclusion and truth. And even though it's set in the 70s, man, it's exactly what people are looking for today. And the answer is Jesus. It's the same then as it is now. And I also really liked that it didn't paint a perfect picture of the church either.
Really?
Yeah, like it showed men's egos kind of getting in the way of God, and it showed the intolerance of people inside of faith. But it also showed that despite that, if we just get out of the way, revival is possible.
So what did you not like about the movie?
That I wasn't in it. Like that bothered me a little bit. I got to tell you, the Erwins, they cast Kelsey Grammer, and he's great. They got Jesus from The Chosen. I mean, that's a great get, but they could have had me for a whole lot less. But in the end, man, I really thought it was a great movie.
Well, if you want to check it out and hopefully enjoy it as much as Wally did, it opens in theaters on February 22nd.
Welcome to the Wally Show Aftercast, all the things we did not get to during the course of the show today. And this is exciting because we actually have Andy Erwin. Now, he has produced films like I Can Only Imagine, American Underdog, just to name two of the movies I'm in. But he has a new movie out called The Jesus Revolution. Welcome to the show.
This is where I start the apology tour, Wally, that we didn't get you in this one.
I'm a little shocked. Why?
You're kind of our secret sauce, like our secret weapon.
Gosh.
Thank you.
This idea to cause a fight between the two.
Yeah.
This idea that we should have had this Philip Seymour Hoffman shock jock in the 70s, and you would have been perfect, but you're too expensive now that you're a star.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm making residuals, so what are you going to do now? And I want to get to that too about being typecasted because I need to be in some movies that aren't just DJ roles. We'll get to that in a little bit.
Let's not.
No, we will. So the Jesus Revolution is about the Jesus movement in the 60s and 70s, and it's also the faith story of Pastor Greg Laurie. Okay. Right. So I remember like right after Underdog and I was talking to you and you're like, we got this new thing that I'm really geeked about. And you were telling me it was about the story of Greg Laurie and the pastor. And I remember thinking, really? like, okay, you're like super excited about this. Okay, good, interesting choice coming off of an NFL story with, Kirk Warner, and now we're going to go with the pastor. Okay, why tell this story? What about this story that had you so excited about it?
Yeah, it's funny because where there's inspiration, we had the same reaction when we were talking about doing I Can Only Imagine. Like, I heard one comedian was like, what was the pitch session like that? It was like, oh, we've got this big robot movie or this one about this giant ship that sinks as a love story, or we got this guy that pitches a song because his dad died and the record label says yes.
Yeah.
Like, do that movie. So, you never know what inspiration is going to hit you. But with this one, this film was one that my brother was passionate about for a while. And so we did a movie called Woodlawn about 8 years ago. And in that movie, it dealt with the end of the Jesus movement and this, kind of school that found, their way into this spiritual revival. But there was a magazine cover that John found that it was Time magazine. And on the cover, it was 1969, I believe. And the cover said, it was a black cover, and on it just had the white letters that said, "Is God dead?" And then 4 years later, he found a Time magazine cover that said, "The Jesus Revolution." And he was like, what the heck happened between those two covers?
Yeah.
Like it had to be a seismic event. And so as he began to dig into that story and learned, Greg Laurie was this hippie kid in the middle of it. There was this pastor, Chuck Smith, that was the first to kind of let the hippies in the church that Kelsey Grammer plays in our film.
He is fantastic, by the way.
Good.
Okay.
He's so good.
That brings up this. Like, he's a good get. How did you get Kelsey Grammer to do this?
That's like a really big burn on him.
No, I don't mean it that way. No, I mean, how
did you take it that way? Because
I've learned with Wally that, just to let it bounce off.
No.
Okay, I'm a little insulted, but no, we're good.
No, it's
I'm pretty
get.
too.
He's actually a good actor, so how did you
actually
get
got somebody good. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Well, hold on. I got a Kevin Sorbo question coming up. Pace yourself.
I'm uncomfortable in my work environment. And so, with Kelsey, he was on his back porch and was like out, just kind of having this one of his kind of evenings on the back porch. And he said he's not a big praying kind of guy, but he said a prayer that night of like, I want to do something with my life that counts. Went into his office and his agent had put the script for Jesus Revolution on it, and he read it. And he's like, "You're going to think I'm crazy. I'm doing this movie."
Really?
And he did it. And after he saw the final product, he told me and John, he's like, "This is my favorite thing I've ever been a part of."
Really?
So it was just one of those things that was supposed to happen. And then to put him in scenes with Jonathan Rumi plays this hippie evangelist, Lonnie Frisbee, in this story. So Jonathan, of course, is Jesus from The Chosen. And the scenes between that character Lonnie that Jonathan plays and Chuck Smith that Kelsey plays, they're magnetic. It's
absolutely
amazing together. So it was a great cast.
They both do such a good job at what they're doing. And that's the interesting thing about you and what you do with your stuff is you don't just hire the Kevin Sorbos, and make it a Christian movie. I'm sorry. But you don't. You hire people that are going to be good actors or good for the movie, whether they're believers or not.
Right.
And I've always respected that.
Sure.
And people gravitate towards that because do you almost envision it like an outreach for you as part of what you're doing while making the movie?
Yeah. I mean, it's a big part of what we do. Each person's kind of called to make their kind of films, and certain people want to make their films and they like to have an all Christian cast and all Christian crew, and that's great. We actually are a little bit more rough and outside the box, that we feel very outwardly focused towards people outside the church walls. That's our mission field.
Yeah.
So we're not afraid to hire people that believe completely the opposite that we believe, as long as they take the material seriously and they do their homework. So like in a situation like, in American Underdog, when we cast Anna Paquin to play Brenda.
Because she's not a believer.
She's not. And that was the first thing she said when we had a phone call. She's like, I'm not a person of faith at all. It's just not something it's just really foreign to me. But I'm fascinated with this story. Is that a problem with me playing a Christian? And I was like, no, Anna, not as long as you take this seriously and do your homework. So she comes on set the first week and was like, hey, I've read every one of Brenda's books. I've watched every one of her Women of Faith speeches.
Nice.
And I understand it's more of a relationship than a religion. And this person's born again. How does somebody get born again? What is that like?
Oh, wow.
And so we had these really deep spiritual conversations. That was her job for doing the movie. So why wouldn't I want to cast an Oscar winner in the role if it gives me a chance to talk to him about Jesus? So that's great.
And then you guys, too, I mean, as you guys live out your faith in the midst of that, there's got to be something different, too, on the set when they see you guys praying here and there. They see how you guys resolve conflict or what have you that I think is indelible, for them as well. You told, I didn't know this. There's a great story. Again, talking with Andy Erwin about the Jesus Revolution, but there's a great subtext story of this. There's a character in the movie who is like a guy in a wheelchair, drug addict, feels like he's beyond the scope of God's love. And okay, that's great. That's a good storyline inside of this. It fits with what's going on in the movie. But the story behind the story is pretty stinking amazing.
Yeah, it was cool. So this character is a Vietnam vet that comes home from the war and is kind of homeless and a drug addict. And in the midst of us, when John and the team were cast in the film, there was this social media story about this kid named Shaun Weiss. And if you remember back when we were younger, there was the Mighty Ducks movies, right? So the goalie played in that movie was this kid Goldberg. He was the heavy set
Goldberg.
Goldberg.
Yeah.
Everybody loved Goldberg. Well, the kid that played him, Shaun Weiss, after being a kid actor, bottomed out, got into drugs. And got into meth and ended up being homeless on the streets of L.A.
Whoa.
And he had just, after being on meth and almost dying, he had just tried to get into recovery and had gotten sober, and his story hit social media. Well, our boss at Lionsgate, who's not a Christian, saw the story and was like, isn't this kind of one of the people that you're telling about in the story? He's like, you ought to put him in the movie. And we like, that's a great idea. Yeah. So we contacted him. We flew him in. Lionsgate paid for all the expenses to make sure that he was on set. And when we got to that baptism scene on the beach at Pirates Cove, Greg Laurie was there on set. And before we started doing the scene, Sean comes up to Greg and is like, can you walk me through how to pray this prayer for real? Because I want to make this decision. Crazy. And I want you to baptize me for real.
Crazy.
Wow. And so we're like, everybody cheered, and then he got baptized for real after making a decision for Christ. And it was just like this organic thing that happened that nobody planned on, but it just was kind of imitated what the movie was about. And it's a pretty cool movie that's both rebellious and super, super overt in its content.
See, and I love that. Like, that's the thing, too. Again, it's the thing that you guys do off the set that it makes your movies, I think, even more successful on screen, because of the heart behind that. Like, that's awesome. Like, you talk about the guy who plays Jesus from The Chosen. Was he happy just to not be playing Jesus? like that has to be a great day for him.
It's kind of, what Jonathan's done, it lines up with those iconic characters in film. It's like, how do you move on from being Luke Skywalker?
Right.
It's like, or Frodo Baggins, or one of those kind of characters. It's like, you're always going to be because it's so indelible. But Jonathan's a fantastic actor, and what he's done on The Chosen is definitely special. But this character is one that is a different side of him. There's a dangerousness to his character in this one, and then also there's a humor. Like, he gets some of the best one-liners in the film that just like bring down the house. And a lot of that was just Jonathan on the spot, being funny.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some of that stuff was he just kind of threw in these one-liners at the end of scenes, and it's just like, oh my gosh, that's hysterical. So he'll definitely charm you in a way that's, it's uniquely Jonathan. It's, the actor that you love, but it's a different shade of anything that he's done. So it's pretty cool.
Well, here's the thing too. I was curious because, you tell a story from this perspective. So it's the Jesus movement in the late 60s, early 70s. And just a quick little synopsis of it. Basically, the guy who goes on to be Pastor Greg Laurie, is being affected by this. He's doing drugs and stuff. And then he gets into this church, has, an encounter with Jesus, and then gets to, live out his faith and run a church. Do you know if he ever went to seminary?
I don't know that about Greg. I mean, he's such a wild guy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, Greg could literally tell me anything about himself and I'd believe it. He's lived so many different lives, and you're just like, he's part evangelist, he's part hippie, he's part, music lover, part, kind of actor. He's a little bit of everything. So, he's had an interesting, I don't know.
Because he's with Harvest Church.
Yeah,
like, that's
Harvest Church. That's a huge church.
And
I mean, he's like the last of the Jedi. Like, he's the guy one of the last guys that can fill stadiums in the U.S. for these big, evangelistic rallies that he does that are kind of in the vein of a Billy Graham. And so, he's a special dude. I think the thing that I like the most about the movie is, people come into it thinking it's going to be one thing. And I'm sure you got to go to the screening the other night with all of our friends. And I'm sure when you first get invited to something like that, you're thinking like, oh, it's going to be another kind of Jesus movie. But when you watch it, it's so it's got such a rebellious kind of take, that it's pretty wild to watch people's reactions, because these weren't like the bad kids going to do sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Right.
The idea was these were kids that were looking for the right things, whether it's truth or love or to belong. They were just looking for it in all the wrong places, and we were told like LSD was going to be what unlocked their minds. And then the bottom dropped out. And then in the midst of this spiritual awakening that we haven't seen since just hit these kids, and they went from being freaks to Jesus freaks. Mm-hmm. And so, there's something really interesting. And then the other thing that trips us out is we started showing it to a lot of secular audiences and our bosses at Lionsgate and everybody. And the thing that makes them just kind of flip out is they're like, this is in our language. This is counterculture. But it's about Christianity.
Right.
And how does these two things go together? And you can see they're just their wheels spinning, trying to figure out, why do I love this movie? It's very very
I have to tell you, the thing I really loved, so like before going to the premiere, all right, so I go to another movie, I don't even remember what I was seeing, but like my best friend is agnostic. Right. And we're open about it, we make jokes about it and stuff, because we know where each other stands and stuff. So we're walking into the theater to go see this other movie, and there's this big Jesus Revolution poster, the banner thing there, and he looks at it and he goes, oh, that's one I won't be seeing. And so we go into the theater, and sure enough, here comes the trailer for Jesus Revolution. And so we're watching it, and I'm watching him kind of watch it and stuff, and then I'm talking with his wife and everything after, and he's like, you know what, that actually looks pretty good. And I'm like, oh, that's, to me, I'm like, thank you for making that kind of a film, because this is somebody that, I want to see come to faith, and like we've had all these conversations, but he like looked at this and went, man, that looks good. And just from the trailer alone, and I think the theme that made him understand that, or what resonated, is this theme of like inclusion, and how this pastor took the outcasts and brought them in, and that's what we're supposed to do with our faith. So, I mean, do you think that that's one of the messages that you think will resound with people?
Absolutely. It was pretty wild, because I think that inclusion has become such a dirty word within Christianity, because it's meant to kind of portray this idea of thoughts that we feel like are pushing us to not be who we are. But I think when you look at that word in the context of what we do, It's evangelism.
Right.
Evangelism's an invitation. Come as you are.
To be included.
And to be included.
Yeah.
And so the idea of using people's own expectations and ideas, in a way that they don't see it coming, it Trojan horses the gospel. So when we showed it to Lionsgate, the first thing they said, we thought they were going to get a lot of pushback that it literally has Jesus in the title.
Yeah.
It's very overt as far as the content. But they watched it and they came up and had tears in their eyes like, this is so inclusive. It's an invitation to the rejects that the church didn't want. I'm like, absolutely. They're like, we love this film. It's the kind of movies we want to make.
Nice.
So for them, it would it let their guard go down. But for us, what we're trying to do is plant the seed of the idea of the gospel. And, we'll play the game to be able to get that message out there.
Well, it's interesting that this was set in the 60s and 70s, but the same thing is still today.
Yep.
I mean, it hasn't changed. We as people haven't changed. You're still looking to belong, and you're still looking for someone to give a rip about you.
Yep.
And that's where the church hasn't always been known for doing that. And so, like, this kind of thing, I think, is healthy for people because they are looking for meaning and they are looking to, belong. And I do like the fact that you guys didn't just show the rosy side of church. Like you showed the one pastor not wanting people or other people in the church not wanting these people. And then people getting it out of whack and thinking they were bigger than God, and I think that's important. Do you ever worry though, like as you tell these stories that people might then go, yep, I knew it. Christians are all like that and miss the overriding message?
I think that fear a lot of times keeps us from actually making really good stories. I think that people say they don't like cheesy Christian films. Mm-hmm. I think what they're reacting to, it's not the message, it's the delivery system. And I think
absolutely
the delivery system, I think, is Christians are afraid to not present a Pollyanna version of their faith.
Yeah.
And so we edit out all the flaws. We edit out all the conflict. In the absence of conflict, there's no tension. Tension's what drives a story forward. And that makes a cheesy film. Whether that's a Hallmark movie or a Christian movie, it doesn't matter. If it's just too easy, then as human beings, we were like, okay, that's not a story. So we lean into the idea of what is the conflict, what drives the tension, and where are the flaws? Where's the humanity? Because that's real life. And I think you look at the Bible's full of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think God put it in there to show it's not about the people being perfect. It's about what they believed and what they were affected by. That's the thing was the thing that was of real value.
Yeah.
And so, we don't shy away from the conflict that Christians are messy.
Well, I think the thing is, anytime agenda pops up in art is where it gets murky and where people get off the bus right away. And Christian films suffer from this. Like you start telling this story and then there's that pivotal moment and bam, the agenda hits you in the face.
There it is.
And you're like, okay, now I know what we're in, and it waters down the art. The beauty of this story is that the agenda is basically the story, and because it's just woven all through it. So it doesn't feel like it comes out of left field because it was the Jesus movement of a historical time.
We just leaned into it.
Yeah.
And this was really had a lot to do with, my brother is the writer and director with Brent McCorkle, is the idea that they leaned into this was a time where the overtness of it was the rebelliousness of it.
Right.
And it's like those two things shouldn't go together. The idea of something that's overtly Christian and counterculture, how does that go together? The idea of the big conflicts within the church, but it being the most uniquely pure version of Christianity that I think our nation has seen in the past 200 years. So it's like, how did all those things, it's the contradiction that makes it interesting. Mm-hmm. And people kind of lean in and like, I shouldn't be liking this, but I like it.
Yeah.
And I've actually enjoyed the most showing it to people that are from the secular side of things, and it trips them out.
Yeah.
It just trips them out. And like in other things that we've done that, like, with I Can Only Imagine, a movie that you starred in, I Can Only Imagine.
Thank you. Betty's like,
Typecast, yes, but you're in it.
But starring.
And
thank you.
My favorite moment in my career is when we won a Dove Award for that, and I agreed on the red carpet that if we won, that you could come up on stage and accept it.
Yeah.
And as soon as they announced us, I see you like a 100-yard dash sprinter.
Yeah.
Like full, like just,
I'm a good 40 rows back.
You were like leaping over sections. You beat me to the stage. And I'm like, and it so took my breath away that I was like, I don't know what to say. I'm like, it took me literally. But anyway, imagine when we got to the part where we earned that breakfast table scene with Bart and his dad, there was a large portion of an initial test audience that was worried that, well, he should forgive his dad right away.
Right.
And I was like, well, that's not real life. I mean, he was abused as a kid, and then this is the first time that he has any real power. The first thing he's going to feel is angry.
Right.
And he's not. So when he gets to that moment where he's like, God can forgive you, I can't.
Yeah.
And then he has to kind of work his way towards that. That's real life. And I think in real life, there's an opportunity for the message to shine in a way that's not expected.
Well, I've always told people when they're writing Christian movies or they're asking my opinion about stuff, I'm like, write it like you want to write it, and then the part where you have the big pivotal moment about faith, go back through and take about the last paragraph off, because like you've got this great moment and the soliloquy is good, and then you have to heavy-handed.
And then you're monologuing.
Yeah, exactly. Just take that last paragraph out. You'll probably be okay.
Yeah, exactly.
But it happens in mainstream movies too. Okay, A Man Called Otto with Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
Great film. Yep. Loved it. Have you seen it yet?
Yeah, I saw it.
Okay, so great. But then the second they introduce the trans character, instantly you're like, agenda, here it is. Like, everybody does it. You mentioned Hallmark movies. Like, you lose the art in the agenda.
If you get, it just has to be rooted in story. It can't be because you're trying to check a box.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other ones that have done it for their perspective. Every movie preaches. Other ones just do it better than others.
Yeah.
So like, there's movies that, don't really affect the way I think or my beliefs, but they do it in a way that really earns it. And so when it gets to that moment, it kind of hits you in a way that makes you consider somebody else's opinion. As Christians, we can either rail against that or we can do it on our own, and by earning the right to be heard, planting the thought, but letting people begin to kind of wrestle with that for themselves and not feel like we got to seal the deal. So we tell stories of redemption. We plant that seed and plant that idea, and we just take a step back and say, let it be what it is. Mm-hmm. And then, it's called emotional jamming. If I can jam a wedge between somebody's heart and their head and make them feel something, then it will stick, and it will begin to reverse engineer it to their head and challenge their thinking.
Now, is emotional jamming something you learned in film school, or is that something like psychological you learned?
There's other.
It's fascinating.
It's not original to us. There's other communities that have used it well.
Okay.
And we've studied kind of their strategies, and we're like, well, as Christians, we can either criticize that, or we can say, can we use that? Mm-hmm. And I think that it's a very useful tool that other communities have done much more brilliantly than we have.
Yeah.
And so we're like, we're going to adopt that. So originality is just forgetting the source. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I used to have a guy tell me originality is the secret of that is learning to conceal your sources.
Yeah, exactly.
So Lonnie Frisbee in this is like the itinerant preacher played by the guy who plays Jesus in The Chosen. And, this part of this movie super landed with me and super scared me. Yep. And I'm curious for you as somebody that creates things. So he gets it all out of whack, and he starts thinking that he's doing the healing and he's hearing from God, and it becomes all about him, and he's lost what it was that made him great, And so that part landed with me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I fear losing what I have because I start trying to control it myself, or I take it for granted. Do you ever wake up at night and have a fear like that?
All the time. I have nightmares about it, and I wake up and they're like, what did I do? I don't know what I'm doing. And it's like, the idea, I think because God chooses to use messy people, and all of us have our insecurities. So Like I remember when I was mixing Underdog, I was on the stage at Sony, and the other three stages that were or screens that were mixing next to me. One was Denzel Washington was mixing his movie that he had directed.
He's pretty good.
He's pretty good. Across the hallway was Michael Mann, who was mixing, the guy that did Heat and all these, huge action movies in the 90s. He's mixing his TV series. And then the fourth stage was Jason Reitman was test screening Ghostbusters.
Oh.
And I was like, so I texted a buddy. I was like, who's the imposter here?
That's interesting.
And then he texted back and he's like, honestly, all four of you. I'm like, all right, touche.
Oh, that's really good.
Touche.
That is a great commentary, man.
Like, we're all just faking it and thinking like if anybody knew that I didn't know what I was doing, they'd expose me. But I think the idea with Lonnie's character is he's a really complex guy. But he was the secret sauce. Him and Chuck Smith together were the secret sauce to the Jesus movement.
Right.
And Lonnie had this wildness about him that was very intriguing. But then all of a sudden, in the midst of this huge awakening that he was the spark for, he started kind of drinking the Kool-Aid and thinking like, hey, this is because I'm a big deal.
Yeah.
And then that just completely subverted all the things that he had been a part of. And that is a terrifying reality. And I think we're all capable of that. I know I am. You know, that idea of starting to believe the hype that this is about me. Instead of, God, I got to be a moment of something you're doing.
That's why I suggest for you that you find yourself a Betty. Like you need a Betty, yes, because Betty will make sure that you know it isn't about you, and she will keep you humble.
The amount that is unsaid between you two, when you say a comment, she gets this little smirk, and her right eyebrow just goes up, and it's like, oh, bullcrap.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Everybody, I think, needs a Betty in their life for sure. All right, so down to this: how do you know a film is going to be a hit before the first dollar comes in, and how do you know one's going to be a bomb?
Well, if I knew how to do that, we'd only make hits, Wally.
Okay, now you take yourself out. Mom's Night Out was a great movie.
Okay.
I loved it. I knew you said you're never doing another comedy again.
Well, it's just because I had to turn in like 5 years of my life span for doing that one.
It made me laugh.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. We had a good time, but it's stressful. Doing comedy's hard.
Yeah.
What you guys do, making things funny and still relatable, that's a challenge. But for us, I think the thing is, we test screen it like a lot, and just to see, is there a hunger for it? And, with Jesus Revolution, it's one that we took out, and we've done a really outside the box marketing thing that we hadn't done since Imagine. Lionsgate has allowed us to take it to these churches and doing big screenings with like the whole church to kind of test it. So we've probably done at this point, like probably 35 of those, like big ones. Like on Tuesday, I'm at the Rock in San Diego, and then like we were at Bethel, and we were at the Faith Church in St. Louis, and we've been all over. And seeing it play with a crowd, like there is this surge of energy that comes out of that, and we're like, okay, this is definitely on target. And then it just comes to the point of people vote with their tickets, and it's just like if people show up at the theater, that's what and you can't ever tell if that's actually going to happen. You just have a good feeling, and this one has a good feeling, so we'll see.
I think it would be really frustrating when you write something and you're like, oh, this is the bring it home point, or this is funny, it's going to get a laugh, and you're watching people watch it, and it's crickets, like, oh! You're like, you want to stand up and go, that's funny! What is wrong with all of you?
I want to hire you just to be at the theater to like heckle the crowd.
Just go, ha!
Yeah, exactly.
The car scene was funny.
It was funny. That was a great scene. So we call it this burn the village moment. Where you have the moment in a movie like Beauty and the Beast, and all of a sudden all the villagers rise up and they're like, we're gonna go kill the beast, and like they all decide to like. So it's a terrifying moment to be in a crowd when they decide all at once to like burn down your village and like, we're gonna go destroy this film. We hate it, and they collectively decide it, and it's a terrifying experience. One of the first times it happened. So when John and I, we got started at this youth camp up in New York, and we would do like these film shorts for the kids, like Star Wars and different things like that. And we just do it to entertain the kids. That's where we first fell in love with telling stories. There's nothing more honest than a group of 500 high schoolers watching your product to know, is this good or is this bad? And there was this moment where we did one of the first ones we did was like this Knights of the Round Table kind of King Arthur kind of deal. And it gets to the end, and then it ends with a live thing on stage with like pyrotechnics and like things that we thought was like Lord of the Rings epic. And we got to the end of it, and it's like, it's crickets. Nobody's applauding. And all of a sudden there's this one like 14-year-old kid on the front row, and he's like, is that it? so to this day.
Nice try, bro.
It's like, oh, is that it? So to this day, my brother cannot be in the audience when somebody's watching his movies.
Really?
Because he's convinced this guy's going to come back as a 40-year-old man.
Oh, that's funny.
So sometimes just to trip him out, if John's in the audience, I get to the end and everybody's applauding, I'll be like, is that it? he's like, who said that?
I know that you named your company Kingdom Story, but I think Is That It would have been a great production company name.
Just mess with him. Be like, John, we're going to change the name of this company.
Okay, so here's the thing too. Like you're still in the midst of Jesus Revolution, but your guys are always working farther out.
Yep.
What's the next story? Like now, I would like you were like telling me about this one beforehand. I'm like, I don't know, and then it's really good. So what's the next story you're working on?
We've got 3 or 4 that are in the can. One that's coming out in the fall is this movie called Ordinary Angels that Hilary Swank stars in, along with Alan Ritchson from the Reacher series, and John Gunn directed it. And this film is fantastic. So it was brought to us actually by Dave Matthews.
No way. way.
Yeah. So who's not a Christian, but he saw this story that was a true story, fell in love with it, brought it to Lionsgate, and Lionsgate came to us and like, hey, you're our faith guys. This has faith in it. What do you think? We knew the story. We knew it was about Southeast Church in Louisville and this amazing story of this community rallying around this girl in a blizzard to get her airlifted out for a kidney or a liver transplant. And it's just an amazing true story. So that one's coming out.
Okay, is it already shot?
It's already shot. It's yep.
Need a DJ? The weather's pretty bad today.
I could work you in as a bartender.
Oh my God.
Done.
As some sort of like low level mobster.
Okay, I like that.
Maybe somebody that's working their way out of homelessness. They're not homeless anymore.
Not a problem. I kind of got that look.
And this the creepy guy on the dance floor. One of those things I think we can make work.
I could do them all.
All at once.
Yes.
So, So then the next one I'm doing is my favorite book is this book called Fearless. It's about a Navy SEAL named Adam Brown. I love this book, and so it's going to be a bigger budget film that Jason Hall, that wrote American Sniper, is writing the script for.
Oh, nice!
So this one's going to be exciting. So I've been working it for 5 years to get this book.
Holy cow!
Yeah, it's exciting.
Well, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. More good stuff to look forward to. Yes, Lady Rock.
You notice in that last one that he mentioned, he didn't say you could play anything.
No, nothing. Didn't bring it up. Didn't even bring it up.
I satisfied it on the one that was already shot. Saying, you would have been great for this role. It's already done.
Didn't bring up you could be a mechanic, maybe a guy that holds something.
An American hero. You look like you could play the part of an American hero. No, not even close.
It would be like a tourist that gets somehow accidentally killed in the streets. It would be a good death.
I'll take it. I'm pretty good at that. I could die like the best of them. I die every day on this show. And working with Betty, I die a little.
Okay.
The sniper over here.
Yeah, that's true. She is.
The assassin.
Thank you. Can I ask some questions?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Please.
You're going to let her talk.
Oh, yeah.
What, he went on like 30 minutes there
I know.
without
He's got to get his. Well,
Wasn't alone here.
Okay.
You chimed in a few times, too.
It always comes back to him. Okay, so I think I'm speaking for everyone when I ask these questions. We always get the side of Wally on how it's like being on one of the sets of your movies.
It's amazing.
And how he is just amazing. He's great at what he does. That he was the one that brought in all the people to see the film, all these things. And I promise you, if not daily, it is at least weekly that he brings up the fact that he has been in 2 of your movies.
It has slowed down a little, but for a while it was.
Well, because people are actually rolling their eyes. You can hear them rolling their eyes. So let me ask this. What is it really like working with Wally on set?
Wally, well, he's a bit of a diva.
Of course.
I have to talk him out of his trailer at least once a day. I'd be like, please just come out to set. And he's like, railing about that his writer wasn't met with the M&Ms and all
Absolutely.
that stuff. Wally is very eager. And the funny thing is like I love taking somebody that's very confident in their environment and putting them in something new and watching them kind of it happens all the time. My producing partner Kevin Downs is an actor as well, and so Kevin, when he's a producer, he comes in and he's like jaded and like really, but as soon as he's an actor, he comes in that day and he's like all a bundle of nerves. He's like, how do I look? What's my motivation? I don't know. I'm like, who are you?
Yeah.
So Wally comes in and he's like, we're about to shoot the I Can Imagine scene, and he's like, I was thinking that maybe I could.
Sounds like Porky Pig.
I was like, dude, you're a DJ every day.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know. So I was thinking
it was
maybe
nerve-wracking. Yeah, and the other part of that.
I'm like, action. Put the CD in the kid. Like,
I don't know how.
I told you. Okay. Because we had so many people that were like, wait, I missed it. Where was it? I was like, if you blink it, you're gonna miss him
great.
in the movie.
Here's what happened. You're very right about that. Like when you're in your own world, you're the king of that domain.
Exactly.
But when I'm a type 8 on the Enneagram, I don't have to be the leader if somebody else is better than me at something. Right. So like in that world,
the thing is, no one is ever better than you.
No, in here, no. But in that world, absolutely. Like I'm like the kid that knows nothing, and so I'm like trying to figure this out. But what Andy doesn't tell you is I'm already nervous, okay? And then they spend a good 40 minutes getting the room right and getting it all set up, and lighting and taping, measuring, and all this stuff. And then they're like, and there's one guy in the corner that's like, we're losing the room in 15 minutes. We're losing the room in 10 minutes. We're losing the room in 3.5 minutes. All right, Wally, we're ready for you. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I've got 3.5 minutes. minutes.
It's like, Wally, we have no time.
Yeah.
Give this one, but try not to stink.
Yeah. Don't look at your hands. Just put it in there, son. Like, oh my gosh.
It's like Will Ferrell. What do I do with my
He's got
hand?
the CD case.
It's shaking.
He's like shaking. It's like, I can't get into the system.
It's horrible, man.
Okay.
It's
And then when
horrible.
we got to American Underdog, like there was an eagerness because he's like, now he's got a taste of being a star.
Right.
Yes,
Of
yes.
course.
With American Underdog, I called him literally the day that we were needing to do the recording of like the radio announcer
on a Sunday.
Because
I
somebody
called
dropped
him
out.
up, I called him up and I'm like, hey, Wally, I'm doing this Kurt Warner film. I was wondering
there.
and then all of a sudden the phone goes click and then there's a ring at the front door. He's like, what am I doing? What
What do you need? I'm here for you.
He was literally there in
knew
5
it.
minutes.
Oh,
Okay,
absolutely.
So we were told that in the first one, I Can Only Imagine, that you needed a taller person and that he actually had to stand on a box. Is that true?
Yes. Wally is not actually 6'4".
Yeah, no.
So we went. He's never gonna have to be on the show again, but I like you.
absolutely not.
So I feel safe on this side of the table.
I'm loving everything you're saying.
So when we went to go do the first shot, we said action, and he walks across to go put the CD in the player and say his lines on his microphone, and all you saw was the top part of his forehead walking across the equipment. I was like, we all looked at her like, do we have an Apple box? We might need to.
My gosh.
Yeah. So I had to stand on a
We
box.
built a platform for him.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
But I'd like to point out that Tom Cruise also needs an Apple box.
Most of your most famous actors are 5'6" or under.
Yes, exactly.
Tom Cruise is taller than
No,
you.
he's not. He's
Yes,
five-
he is.
He's not 5'6".
Thank you.
I will Google it right
It
now.
doesn't
You're both
matter.
wrong.
That's his press agent.
both wrong.
That's his press agent.
He's a little guy.
Yeah, this is a guy that makes movies.
He just called him a little guy. He's calling you a little guy.
Doesn't matter.
It's in the same category as Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
It's a compliment. It's kind of like
Exactly.
it's saying some good actors actually are in your movie.
Yeah.
So let me ask this other question. Okay, so in the next film that he was in, Underdog, he didn't have actually a part where you actually see him on
Yes,
film.
Right.
it's his voice.
Was there a reason for that based off of what he had done in I Can Only Imagine?
Oh man.
Like, did you strategically plan that? Because you were like, he was a hot mess.
Well. We'll talk about this off air. I reached my comfort level.
I knew it.
There's a comfort level. Well, I felt like it would. There's this line that we use in the movie that we call it jumping the shark.
Yes.
It comes off an episode of Happy Days where in later episodes it got a little bit outlandish, and the Fonz was skiing on this one thing, and then there's a fake looking shark that comes out and he jumps over the shark while he's skiing. And so it threw the audience out that they hated the series from that point on. Mm-hmm. So we're like, don't jump the shark.
Right.
So, the idea of having the same looking, because Wally's got one look. It works for him.
Yeah, but that's
it works for him. But like,
Does it
this
work
is
for
it.
him?
It's the scrape, the beard that goes in all directions.
That's all I got.
And the 90s jewelry and like rings all over the place. So they're like, I thought, going from Imagine to Underdog, having that same guy would be like, wait a minute, is like, what in the world? Is this the only radio they got?
I see.
Yeah.
We got his iconic golden pipes in there.
Yeah, so there you go.
Okay, one final question.
Oh, please, this is so much fun.
So Wally, I don't know if you know this, but Wally is 54 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, man.
So you're probably what?
45.
45. Wow, I'm really good at that.
Yeah.
Okay. So at your age, and you looking at him at 54, do you think that it's appropriate for a man his age to have as much jewelry as he has on? Do you think it's okay?
I will say, like, your forearm muscles must be massive. The amount of rings you have on your right hand.
But you got some jewelry going too.
I got a little bit.
You
I got
have
a little
3
bit. But
bracelets.
I got 3. I got a few. But
And
I mean,
a
like,
watch.
I don't even have
That's
mine
it.
on.
I feel like you must do like wrist exercises.
Yeah.
Over
Okay.
there.
So, do you have
because
any
it's-
necklaces?
I got a couple.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're not all that far off.
Maybe it's just an age thing.
Yeah, I feel like, you get to that age where you either embrace being kind of the frumpy dad,
Right.
or you try to have at least some edge to you.
Right.
And the best edge you can have is just to have like a I don't care, I don't give a crap kind of thing.
That's pretty much me.
Yeah, and that's
you
kind of
care.
yes. It's
Yeah.
like, but you do care, but you don't want it to look like you care.
Oh, okay. So you're a
So-
little insecure.
Oh, yes.
Massively.
Yeah.
Massively.
Everybody, every great talent is insecure.
Yeah, it's like
See what I did there?
yeah, exactly. It's every great time. When you have brilliance like myself,
Right. You're going to be
there's
insecure.
some residual.
One question.
Yes.
One more.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, they just
loving all
keep
this.
coming.
This is great.
Funny, it's
Okay.
just none of
I
these
like
written
her.
down either. They're all
Yeah.
just pent up inside
Yeah, I
of
just
her.
have-
She was so like cat reflexes still
was
the whole
just
time.
ready. I was just
biting her lip.
ready.
It's like, is it my turn? Okay, it's my turn now.
Okay.
How much do you hate Wally?
Okay, so you've seen how he is on set,
Yes.
and you can compare him to other actors you've worked with,
Yes.
like Kelsey Grammer.
Yeah, right.
Amazing.
So, what are some tips you have for people who are maybe looking into getting into the film industry? They want to be an actor, maybe on a subpar level like Wally, or
Entry level. Entry level is a better term for that.
or a professional level like Kelsey Grammer.
Yeah.
So, what would your tips be to someone?
Oh, don't do it. Like I tell my kids all the time, I was like, if you want to be involved in film, I will help you with whatever you want to do to get a leg up.
Yeah.
My one rule is you cannot act. No acting. But it's like for people that want to do it, you know, the biggest thing is just learning how to. Everybody's like, you know, there was this one actor that I work with that they had so rehearsed the scene in the mirror the night before. They had one way they were going to do
Are you
it.
talking about Wally? He's talking about you.
That might have been me.
As soon as I came over, I was like, "Why don't we try it like this?" And then all of a sudden, they just went. They shut down. They're just like, "But that's the way I prepared it."
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what to do. I'm totally numb now. I don't feel anything. I'm dead inside. And they start panicking. So the biggest thing is just learning how to be natural. And it's one thing. Wally alluded to it. It's one thing to be natural in your environment. It's another thing being natural with a bunch of bright lights and about 100 grown men that are kind of ugly-looking grips standing there just staring at you while you do your thing. And it's like, and they're going to do it like 50 times in a row.
That's
Right. And for the record, it's not just put the CD player in. You have to have your arm at a weird angle because it's in the shot, and it has to come in behind your head, and then you've got to slide it in. Right. It's not just put the CD player in because there's more to movie magic than that, okay? Harder than it looks.
It's the truth to that.
Yeah.
It's also
Thank
like,
you.
well, you're putting a CD in a CD player.
Okay, seriously?
I knew it. Oh, this lived up to my expectations. It was wonderful.
That was a lot of fun. The movie is something by the Kendrick brothers, and
You talk about that with Mom's Night Out. I was at this signing once for Mom's Night Out, and everybody came up and they would give me these emotional stories about your films. They changed my life. Like, thank you. Like, man, it was just so powerful, so emotional. Thank you. Your film saved my marriage. And then I'd have to stop and be like, I didn't direct Fireproof.
yes, exactly.
And then all of a sudden, rather than you telling them the truth, it's like you ruin their moment because they're like, I thought I was talking to that person.
Yeah.
And so I got tired of robbing people of that. So I sat for the rest of that session, and there's about 1,000 posters of Mom's Night Out where I signed it, "Thank you for coming, Alex Kendrick."
That's awesome. Well, there you go. The movie is The Jesus Revolution. The man, the myth, the legend is Andy Erwin, and we appreciate you taking the time to be on the show with us today.
Thank you, guys. I'm glad it helped negotiate your dysfunction.
Oh, no, we need to go to therapy after
you guys.
this. I'm hurt.